Plasma 6 is now officially released, and it's been more than a year since the previous release of that desktop. While 5.27 was awesome, Plasma 6 brings a ton of good stuff, whether you're already a KDE user or you would just like to try it and maybe move to it. So we're going to look at everything new in Plasma 6, my experience with it, and also at this message from our sponsor. This video is sponsored by Proton VPN, the encrypted and private virtual private network from the creators of Proton Mail. Proton VPN lets you bypass censorship and region locking by connecting to a server anywhere in the world, so you can stream any content you like from any service without restrictions, or access parts of the internet that your country doesn't want you to have access to. And thanks to their VPN accelerator, Proton VPN is also really fast. It also comes with NetShield, an ad, malware, and tracker blocker that makes your private browsing even better and safer. And Proton VPN doesn't keep any logs, meaning that they don't track or record your browsing activity at all, and they can't disclose it to anyone. It can even integrate with the Tor network, and it comes with apps for Windows, macOS, Linux, Android, and iOS, or as a browser extension. Proton VPN is free, and if you want even faster speeds and more features, you can upgrade to a paid plan. Proton VPN is also included in your free Proton Mail account, so you can transition your entire digital life to a private and encrypted solution. So click the link in the description below and get started with Proton VPN. Okay, so let's get the technical changes to Plasma 6 out of the way so we can focus after that on the features and the pretty visual changes. Plasma 6 moved its backend to Qt6 entirely, meaning that everything should benefit from better efficiency, better performance, and better security as well. It was a necessary transition, and all components of the default Plasma experience moved to that. You shouldn't really notice any of that, but just know that it's a better base for the Plasma developers to work on. Plasma 6 is also the first version that makes Wayland its default recommendation. They ship with Wayland, and all the focus for new features is on Wayland, although certain features might make it to X11 if they have the time, or if it's even possible to make them on X11. Distros can still choose to ship Plasma 6 with X11 as the default, but that is not what the desktop recommends. And that Wayland support is pretty flawless in my experience. Everything was zippy, smooth, it didn't crash, it's super reliable, even on an Nvidia GPU. Of course, it doesn't fix the issues that Wayland has itself, or the applications that don't support it natively, like Wine or Proton, for example. But where the general experience of Wayland in Plasma 5.27 was solid, in Plasma 6 it is just perfect. The mouse cursor is more responsive even when the desktop itself stutters under load, latency was greatly improved, especially for games, and on top of that, if the compositor crashes, it will no longer kill all your open apps. They'll be safely moved to a backup compositor while Kwin recovers and takes over again. It also looks like the X-Wayland video bridge has been added to handle screen sharing from X11 apps running on Wayland. Although it might have been the distro's work to add that, I've seen it included by default in Fedora 40 and in KDE Neon. So if you used Wayland previously on KDE, you will keep using it, and it's going to be better than in the previous version. And if you didn't like Wayland before, chances are your problem is fixed in here. But if you just disliked Wayland because it's Wayland, then, well, yeah, you're sticking to X11 anyway. Now, this release also brings a few cool things, courtesy of Wayland. HDR is now supported, provided your display also supports it. It's not complete yet, it lacks the ability to render mixed SDR and HDR content at the same time, but for full-screen videos, games, or pictures, you'll be able to see them in HDR. You can also set a color profile for each display individually on Wayland as well. Plasma will then adjust the colors on screen following that profile. Apps will still only use the sRGB color space, but the Plasma team has plans to add more spaces. And finally, you also get color blindness correction filters in the settings to make things more legible. I'm not colorblind, so I cannot judge their efficiency, but there are plenty of options to handle most color blindness types, so I'm sure it will make a difference for a lot of people. So yeah, the backbone of Plasma 6 is really solid. I've been using it since the second release candidate and it never crashed on me once, and I can safely say it is not the bug-ridden mess that KDE 5 was when it released. This one is super polished and very stable. Now for the pretty visual changes, there isn't a lot to cover here, but there are a few changes. Plasma still looks like Plasma. It is still using the Breeze theme and icons, but they were refined a little bit. First, the theme is now lighter on the eyes. They have removed a bunch of the borders that every single panel inside of an app had. So the whole feel of the desktop is similar, but also nicer. You don't have as many lines to separate the content to draw your eyes. Separators are just 1 pixel lines now. There's no blue overlay on top of each selected panel. It just looks better. Nothing looks like it's nested inside of the app. It's just more streamlined. Status bars at the bottom of apps also now have a line above them to separate them from the rest of the application. Highlighted items in list views are also different, now with rounded corners and a little bit of spacing. I think it looks okay. It's similar to the highlight effect that you would get in a menu bar. The controls have been made more consistent. They tend to have more similar heights and sizes, meaning that the alignment of buttons and combo boxes and search fields in the toolbars will feel better as well. It is definitely not a huge change, but apps do look less busy and more polished, so it's a good change all around. It's just not a revolution in terms of how Plasma looks. Another visual change is the floating panel by default. Your own settings won't be overwritten, but for new users, the panel will now hover over the bottom edge of the screen. And in terms of usability, it is unchanged compared to how it was. You don't have to aim precisely for the exact icon. You can click under the panel and it will still activate what you clicked or what you intended to click. And that's about it for the visual changes. Plasma 6 looks like KDE Plasma 5.27. It's just a little bit less busy, more legible, more streamlined. I think the changes are good, but if you didn't like Breeze before, you will still not like how Plasma 6 looks. Now for the desktop-related features, because that's really what will change your experience with Plasma. So first, the defaults. They have changed drastically. It will not affect how you use your computer if you just upgrade in place, but for new users, those defaults make a lot more sense. First, single click to select is now the default, with double click to open. In theory, single click to open is easier and more logical, but the truth is most users that come to Linux are already used to another OS, and all other operating systems use double click to open, so it makes sense to move to that. You obviously can still go back to single click to open if you prefer that. Tap to click on touchpads is also the default now, which is normal, it should always have been. And the task switcher that comes up when you press Alt plus Tab is a more familiar grid of thumbnails instead of the side column Plasma used before. The team also disabled scrolling on the desktop to switch workspaces. The option is still there if you want to enable it, but for newcomers it will avoid weird behaviors that they just did not understand. Now that's it for the defaults. They also removed a few options from the right-click menu on the desktop. You can still re-enable them, but the menu looks less busy. Those are sane defaults and they'll be better for newcomers to Linux and to KDE because they're closer to what they're used to. Now for the changes that will affect everyone. First, panel configuration. The previous messy pop-ups and rulers were replaced by something much more visual, which will absolutely be a better experience. You get visual representations of the settings that you're changing, with combo boxes to select what you want. You can change the height, the opacity, the position, the alignment, the length, and the visibility, all in one place. And you also gained a new option, the ability for the panel to dodge windows, meaning that the panel will be visible at all times unless a window covers it, at which point it just gets out of the way and you can bring it back by pushing your mouse cursor against the edge that the panel rests on. It is the auto height feature that I needed that has been missing in Plasma for a long while. It's long overdue and it's awesome to finally have it again. Now, another big change is the combination of the overview and the present windows effect. In itself, it feels like the older overview, except it looks a lot like GNOME's, where your current desktop has rounded corners, hovers over a blurred, translucent background with a strip of virtual desktops on top and a KRunner search field under it. What also changed are the touchpad gestures, and these are much better. You don't have to repeat the same gesture twice to go back to your desktop after opening the overview. It is now as good as GNOME's Activity View and as nice to use with touchpad gestures. I have nothing to criticize here, it's just a stellar improvement over everything. You don't feel like these animations and effects have been tacked on the base desktop, you feel like you're actually interacting with the desktop itself, which was the goal, so props, it really works well. Now you can also get the desktop cube back. I could only make it work if I had 4 virtual desktops, I didn't try it with more. It's not more functional than the overview, it's probably worse. It's not more usable than the overview, it's probably worse. But it is pretty, and it did help convert a lot of users back in the day, so why not? Another change is the ability to just click inside of a scroll bars area to move the content directly to that area. You don't have to drag the scroll bar or use the mouse wheel, you just click where you'd like to go and the scroll bar jumps there. Finally, KRunner got faster, way faster, and it now lets you reorder the various elements that it shows when you search for something, provided you add them to your favorites, and the reordering is not really WYSIWYG, like you have to drag an element and drop it on top of another before it gets reordered. It's not super usable in terms of interface, but you can actually sort the results in the order that you want them to. So these are some pretty cool refinements and cool features. It's not as much as I had hoped for a full year of development, but at the same time, it does make KDE feel a lot more polished, especially on the overview side of things and the panel configuration. So those are really great changes, and whether you're a newcomer or someone used to KDE, they're just going to make your workflow better. Now for the changes in the settings, because it's Plasma and it needs to change its settings with every single release. First, visually the settings are less busy. Gone are the double rows of icons at the bottom of pages. They now mostly move to the toolbar of the settings app, meaning that settings pages now look a bit nicer, and the space that the app uses is used better as well. They've also reduced the number of pages that were opened by clicking a button inside of another page, so things are easier to find, and the settings were reordered into other categories that will make more sense to certain people and less sense to others. It is a side grade, it doesn't really improve navigation in the settings, it's just a different way of sorting them. Some people will like it, I personally don't care. Now you do get a new sound theme preference page to change the sounds that your desktop will play for certain actions, and the default sound theme was also revamped. It's now called Ocean. It sounds okay, it reminds me a lot of the PS5 sound effects. I generally just disable most of these sounds anyway. And finally, you also get easier configuration of which app will open a broad category of file. You can set, for example, an app for all audio files, or an app for all video files, instead of handling that for each file type. You can still do that, of course, but it's easier to apply sweeping changes. They also touched up and merged and revamped and made other settings pages more legible. It's definitely an improvement, but it doesn't make those settings easier to navigate. There's still a lot of options everywhere. If you like that, you're gonna be okay with it. If you didn't, you're still going to be lost. Personally, I'm used to it by now, but I will admit the settings in KDE will never look streamlined or easy because there are just too many options, and that's what KDE is here for. And let's finish this tour with the changes to the applications. Dolphin received changes to its settings as well, reordering a bunch of things, and it gained keyboard shortcuts to access the toolbar buttons and the disk space usage bar that lives in the status bar. You can also now right-click a folder to open it in split view. Spectacle, the screen recorder, now shows a tray icon when it's recording your screen. You can click that icon to end the recording. It also supports recording just a part of your screen, and it has new keyboard shortcuts to handle all of this. Everything will now be saved by default in the pictures/screenshots directory or the pictures/screencasts directory. And of course you can change that. It also supports VP9 to record videos, and you can also invoke it using the command line. Kate, the text editor, has a new JSON parser that's apparently way faster. It now supports text-to-speech, it can also sync the scrolling in split views, and it has more automatic setup options for a variety of languages. Console has redesigned settings as well, and will now use less RAM. Text selection now works for Chinese, Korean, or Japanese languages, and every tab now runs in a separate C group, meaning the entire app will no longer be killed if your system needs to kill a process to save some resources. KDE Connect can now connect to other devices using Bluetooth only, and it now supports MDNS, meaning you should see available devices now instead of having to hunt them down or use their IP address to connect to them. Its settings also now live in the system settings instead of their own window. And a bunch of apps also received changes, like the Contact Suite received a ton of work, although the interface is still extremely complex and unwieldy. Kdenlive received the ability to replace an audio or a video clip in the timeline, and also better easing modes for various transitions. NeoChat, the Matrix client, now has a welcome page to set up an account or create one, and it now supports spaces. And Tocodon, the Mastodon client, now lets you set focal points on images, you can hide boosts and replies in the timeline, and it has a better first launch experience. So, Plasma 6, it took a year to arrive, and was it worth the wait? Honestly, I think so, yes. It is not a revolution. It's not like the transition from KDE 3.5 to KDE 4, or even from 4 to 5. It's more like a move from KDE 5.27 to something like KDE 5.50. You do get a lot of refinements to the theme, to the settings, and to the apps, and the desktop feels more polished and less like a jumble of parts that sort of plug into each other. But it is still KDE Plasma. If you loved it, you will probably love it even more. It just got better. If you didn't like it, chances are you will still not like it. And if you're a newcomer to Linux, it's probably going to be a better starting point than it ever was before. What is more interesting is the new underlying stack, with a solid foundation using Qt6 and with Wayland support being as close to perfect as can be while we wait for the last few protocols that are still missing. Plasma 6 is in a fantastic place to move the Linux desktop into the future. Or into the present, if, like me, you have moved to Wayland a while back and you haven't touched X11, that old thing, in a long while. Whatever your case is, you can still use KDE Plasma with X11, and if you use Wayland, you will love your experience even more, because Plasma 6 basically fixes all the remaining issues that KDE had under Wayland. So yeah, now you can wait for your distro to actually ship Plasma 6 to you. If you use Fedora, you'll get it in April with Fedora 40. If you use Kubuntu or any Ubuntu-based distro, you will not get it until October, which is a long while. If you use KDE Neon, you'll get it automatically, and if you use a rolling release distro, chances are it's gonna come in the coming weeks or month. Personally, I will wait for Tuxedo OS to bring those packages from KDE Neon into the distro. I'm sure it will take a few weeks, but I'm also sure they will give me the update relatively soon. And speaking of Tuxedo, they're also the sponsor of this video. If you need a new computer to run Linux on, and you want to support a company that actually supports Linux instead of giving your money to a company that only ships their devices with Windows, then take a look at the link in the description below and look at Tuxedo computers. They make laptops, desktops, and NUCs that run with Linux out of the box, and all their devices are very customizable. They have a big range that will cover every price point and every need, whether you need an office laptop all the way up to a giant workstation or gaming tower or a gaming laptop. You can open all the laptops and also repair them and upgrade them. You can pick from a variety of components. You can have your own logo engraved on the lid. You can pick your own custom keyboard layout. It's just really solid. I only use Tuxedo devices these days. The whole channel runs on a Tuxedo Infinity Book Pro 16, and all my gaming is done on a Tuxedo Cube running Holo ISO. So if you need a new computer, you want to run Linux, and you want to give your money to a company that actually supports Linux and contributes patches upstream, then click the link in the description and get yourself a device from Tuxedo. They're really good. So thanks everyone for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, you know what to do. There's a like button, subscribe button, a notification bell icon, the comment section, and all that good stuff. And if you really enjoy the channel, there are plenty of links to support it down in the description, including Patreon and YouTube memberships, which will actually get you access to a daily Linux and open source news show from Monday to Friday. So thanks for watching, and I guess you'll see me in the next one. Bye!